Jack Reacher had no particular destination in mind, which was how he preferred it. The road was the destination. The hot Arizona sun beat down on the cracked asphalt of a two-lane highway that stretched to a shimmering, indistinct horizon. He'd been walking for hours, the rhythm of his steps a steady, meditative beat. He carried nothing but the clothes on his back, a foldable toothbrush, and a passport that was more a collection of memories than a tool for future travel. A sign appeared through the heat haze. Tres Cruces, pop. 9:47. It promised nothing more than a bottle of cold water and perhaps a cheap meal, which was all he needed. As he walked down the town's main street, the silence struck him first. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleepy desert town. It was a tense, brittle silence, the kind that precedes a storm or follows a tragedy. Doors were closed, windows were shuttered, despite the oppressive heat. The few people he saw scurried from one building to another, eyes downcast, shoulders hunched. They didn't just avoid his gaze. They seemed to be actively trying to unexist in his presence. Reacher had seen this kind of fear before. It was the fear of people living under an occupation, a quiet, corrosive terror that permeated everything. He stopped at a diner with a flickering neon sign that read, "Eat." The windows were grimy, but it looked open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and grease. A woman with weary eyes and a faded dress stood behind the counter, polishing a glass that was already clean. Every customer, all three of them, sat alone, staring into their coffee cups as if they held the secrets of the universe. When the bell over the door chimed, all four of them looked up, and the same expression flashed across their faces. A jolt of alarm, followed by a quick, practiced neutrality. Reacher took a seat at the counter. The woman approached without a word, placing a menu in front of him. It was a single laminated sheet, the corners peeling. "Coffee black," Reacher said. She nodded, her movements stiff, and poured him a cup from a half-empty pot. The coffee was bitter and lukewarm. He drank it anyway. He looked around the diner. At a corner table, two men in dusty jeans and plaid shirts were talking in low whispers. When they noticed him looking, they fell silent, their hands dropping below the table. They weren't locals. They had the hard, watchful eyes of men paid to be paranoid. A police car, a dusty Ford Crown Victoria, cruised slowly past the diner. The deputy behind the wheel had a thick mustache and a face that looked permanently tired. He slowed down, his eyes scanning Reacher through the window, then accelerated and drove on. The scrutiny was too long for a simple curiosity check. Reacher finished his coffee and left a couple of dollars on the counter. The woman took the money without making eye contact. Back on the street, the oppressive silence seemed to have intensified. He decided to walk the length of the town, a habit that gave him a quick layout of any new place. The main street was only a few blocks long, bookended by a gas station at one end and a small, whitewashed church at the other. But behind the main street, Reacher saw warehouses, large, corrugated metal buildings that seemed far too substantial for a town of this size. And leading to them were fresh, heavy tire tracks, the kind left by loaded trucks. He saw the deputy's car parked near an alley. The deputy, a man named Cutler according to his name tag, was talking to the two men from the diner. The conversation was tense. Cutler was sweating, shaking his head. One of the other men put a hand on the deputy's shoulder, not in a friendly way. It was a gesture of ownership, of quiet threat. The deputy flinched, nodded, and got back in his car. The two men watched him leave, then their eyes found Reacher, standing half a block away. They didn't wave, they just stared. The message was clear: you've been noticed. Reacher knew he should just keep walking, get back on the highway, and let Tres Cruces choke on its own silence. He had no stake here, no mission, no reason to stay. But the sight of that fear, the quiet desperation in the diner and the palpable threat in the alley had snagged on something inside him. He hated bullies, and this entire town felt like it was being held in a chokehold by a bully too big to see. He decided he'd stay for one more cup of coffee. He turned and walked back toward the diner, feeling the weight of the two men's stares on his back. He had a feeling the next cup of coffee wouldn't be as quiet as the first. He didn't make it to the diner. The two men from the alley intercepted him, stepping out from between two buildings to block the sidewalk. They were big, but soft in the way of men who relied on reputation and numbers rather than actual conditioning. "You lost, friend?" the taller one asked. His voice was a low rumble. "Not yet," Reacher said. "This town ain't got much for tourists. The highway's that way." He pointed with his chin back the way Reacher had come. "I like the scenery," Reacher said, his eyes not leaving theirs. He noted their stances. They were trying to look relaxed, but their weight was on the balls of their feet, ready to move. "The scenery doesn't like being looked at," the second man said. He had a tattoo of a scorpion on his neck. "It gets shy. Best you move on." Reacher said nothing. He simply stood there, a rock in the middle of their path. His silence was more unnerving to them than any threat would have been. He could see the calculation in their eyes, the shift from casual intimidation to genuine uncertainty. "Last chance, pal," Scorpion Neck said, taking a half-step forward. Reacher didn't wait for him to complete the step. He moved with a speed that was utterly at odds with his size. His right hand shot out, not in a punch, but with his fingers straight and stiff, striking Scorpion Neck in the throat. The man made a gurgling sound and staggered back, hands clutching at his crushed larynx. The taller one was still processing what had happened when Reacher pivoted. An elbow, thrown with the full force of his body's rotation, connected with the man's temple. There was a sickening crack, and the man's eyes rolled back in his head. He fell like a sack of cement, unconscious before he hit the ground. Scorpion Neck was on his knees, struggling for air. Reacher looked down at him. "Tell your boss," Reacher said, his voice calm and even. "I'm staying for a while." He stepped over the unconscious body and continued walking down the street, not looking back. The brittle silence of Tres Cruces had just been broken, and Reacher knew with absolute certainty that the storm was coming. The deputy's car screeched to a halt beside him before he'd gone 20 yards. Cutler got out, his hand resting on the butt of his gun. His face was pale. "You have any idea what you've just done?" he asked, his voice a strained whisper. "Cleaned up some litter," Reacher said. "Those men, they work for El Martillo." Cutler said the name as if it were a curse. "The Hammer? Sounds friendly. He runs this town. He runs everything from here to the border. You just assaulted 2 of his soldiers. He's going to kill you, and he's going to make it slow." "Is that a threat, deputy?" "It's a goddamn weather forecast," Cutler hissed. "Get out of town, now, while you still can. I'm giving you a chance. Don't make me arrest you. It's the only way I can keep you alive for another hour." "Arrest me for what?" "For assault, for disturbing the peace. I don't care. Just get in the car." Reacher looked at the deputy. He saw the same fear he'd seen in everyone else, but there was something else there too. A flicker of a man who once wore the badge with pride. "Where does El Martillo live?" Reacher asked. Cutler just stared at him, his mouth agape. "Are you insane? You don't go looking for him. He finds you. Then I'll make it easy for him." Reacher started walking again. "You should go home, deputy. Lock your doors. Things are about to get loud." Cutler didn't follow. Reacher knew the deputy was now caught in an impossible position. Report to his master what had happened, or try to pretend it didn't. Either way, Cutler's day was about to get much worse. Reacher's too. He was counting on it. He found a small, dusty motel at the edge of town. The man at the front desk was old and frail, with a tremor in his hands. He took Reacher's cash for one night without asking for a name or ID. The room was small and smelled of dust and despair. The lock on the door was flimsy. Reacher wedged a chair under the doorknob and lay on the lumpy bed, fully clothed, and waited. He didn't have to wait long. An hour after sunset, a pickup truck without its headlights on rolled into the motel parking lot. Then another. 4 men got out of each truck. They moved quietly, fanning out to surround his room. They carried baseball bats and tire irons. Amateurs, sent to deliver a beating, not a death sentence. This was the second warning. Reacher was already out the bathroom window. He'd dropped silently to the dusty ground at the back of the building while they were still getting into position. He circled around in the darkness, moving with a ghost-like silence that belied his size. The first man was a lookout, standing near the corner of the building. Reacher came up behind him, a palm heel strike to the base of the skull. The man crumpled without a sound, one down. He could hear the others getting impatient, whispering near the door to his room. "Just kick it in," one of them said. The sound of a heavy boot striking wood, followed by a splintering crash. They poured into the empty room. Reacher waited until they were all inside, momentarily confused by the darkness and the absence of their target. Then he walked to the front door, pulled it shut, and kicked the chair he'd left on the floor back under the knob, wedging it tight. He walked to the side of the building where a propane tank for the motel's water heater was chained to the wall. He used the tire iron he'd taken from the first man to break the valve. Gas hissed into the night air, thick and cloying. He gave it a few seconds, then picked up a small rock and tossed it against the room's single window. The window shattered. Inside, one of the men, probably thinking it was Reacher trying to get back in, sparked a lighter. The resulting explosion was a dull, powerful whoomp that blew the door off its hinges and sent a plume of fire into the night sky. The men who weren't killed instantly were thrown from the room, their clothes on fire, screaming. Reacher was already walking away, melting back into the shadows. The second warning had been returned to sender. There wouldn't be a third. The next wave would be professionals. They would come to kill him. He was looking forward to it. The town was now on high alert. The explosion had shattered the tense silence, replacing it with the sound of distant sirens that seemed to take forever to arrive. Reacher knew the local fire department, if it was even functional, would be slow to respond. No one would want to get involved. He needed information, a layout of his enemy's fortress. He thought of the weary woman in the diner. People who see everything are often the most invisible. He made his way back through the darkened streets, sticking to the alleys. He saw trucks moving now, filled with grim-faced men carrying rifles. El Martillo's army was mobilizing. He entered the diner through the unlocked back door. The woman was there, sitting at a table in the dark, her face illuminated by the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles down the street. She wasn't surprised to see him. "They will hunt you down like an animal," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "They can try," Reacher said. The deputy mentioned a name, El Martillo. She flinched. "You do not say that name." "He runs the warehouses?" She nodded slowly. "He runs the town. He brought jobs," he said. "He bought the old packing plant. But no one who goes to work there ever talks about what they do. They just come back with money and dead eyes. My son, he works there." "What's your name?" Reacher asked. "Elena," she whispered. "Elena, tell me about the plant. Entrances, exits, number of guards. Why? So you can get yourself killed faster?" A tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. "They have my son. All our sons. They work for him, but they are prisoners. If we speak, if we leave, they are punished. We are all prisoners." Now Reacher understood. The town wasn't just complicit, it was a hostage. "Help me, Elena, and I'll help your son." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. She saw no fear, no hesitation, only a cold, hard resolve. She finally gave a small, defeated nod. She drew a rough map on a napkin. The main plant, the fences, the guard towers. She told him about the trucks that came and went at all hours, heading south. She told him El Martillo lived in a large ranch house on a hill overlooking the town, a fortress from which he watched his kingdom of fear. "He watches everything," she said. "They say he has cameras everywhere." Reacher pocketed the napkin. "Thank you, Elena." "He will kill you," she said again, a statement of fact, not a warning. "Many have tried," Reacher said, and slipped back out into the night. He didn't go for the plant. Not yet. A direct assault would be suicide. An army fights on its stomach, and this one ran on logistics. The warehouses were the key. He chose the one farthest from the main plant, shrouded in darkness. The chain-link fence was 12 feet high and topped with barbed wire. Reacher found a spot where a deep shadow was cast by an adjacent building. He took a running start, jumped, and scaled the fence with an animal grace, ignoring the barbs that tore at his hands. He landed silently on the other side. 2 guards were patrolling the perimeter. He tracked them in the darkness, waiting for them to separate. When one rounded the corner of the building, Reacher moved. He covered the man's mouth, snapping his neck with a single efficient twist. He dragged the body into the shadows. The second guard became concerned when his partner didn't check in on his radio. He came looking. Reacher used the first man's own rifle to knock him out with a single, precise blow to the head. 2 down. The warehouse door was secured with a heavy padlock. Reacher used a crowbar he found in a nearby maintenance shed. The metal groaned in protest, then snapped. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of chemicals and plastic. Using a small penlight, he saw what the warehouses were for. They weren't just storing drugs, they were filled with supplies. Crates of weapons, ammunition, tactical gear, radios, and pallets stacked high with shrink-wrapped bricks of cash. This was the logistical heart of the operation. Reacher was not a saboteur by trade, but he understood the principles. He found the fuel lines for the fleet of trucks parked inside, sliced them open with his knife, and let the diesel pool on the concrete floor. He found the main electrical panel and ripped the wires out, showering the area with sparks. Then he found a crate of road flares. It was beautifully simple. He lit one, the red glare painting the cavernous space in a demonic light. He tossed it into the spreading pool of diesel. For a second, nothing happened. Then the fumes ignited with a roar. The fire spread with terrifying speed, racing across the floor and climbing the stacks of supplies. Reacher was already out the door, running for the fence as the first of the ammunition crates cooked off, turning the warehouse into a war zone. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves through the quiet night. A massive pillar of black smoke and orange fire billowed into the sky, a beacon of defiance visible for miles. Reacher was long gone before the first of El Martillo's men arrived to find their armory transformed into a raging inferno. He had cut off the snake's tail. Now he was going for the head. The ranch house on the hill was exactly as Elena had described it, a fortress. A high stone wall surrounded the property, and Reacher could see the glint of camera lenses and the silhouettes of guards on the roof. Getting in would be difficult, but Reacher knew that the most secure fortresses always have a weakness. They are designed to repel a direct assault, not a single, determined ghost. He spent the next hour circling the perimeter, staying in the deep shadows of the desert scrub. He found what he was looking for: a drainage culvert that ran under the wall. It was narrow, filled with debris, and secured with a rusted iron grate. The grate was old. The bolts holding it were corroded. Using a rock, Reacher patiently and quietly hammered at the bolts until they broke. He squeezed through the dark, claustrophobic pipe, emerging into the manicured grounds of the estate. He was inside. He moved from bush to bush, a shadow among shadows, his eyes scanning the house. Lights were on in a second-floor office. He could see a figure silhouetted against the window, talking on the phone, his gestures angry and sharp. It had to be him. El Martillo. Getting into the house was the next problem. The doors and windows were wired, but Reacher saw a team of 4 guards emerge from a side door, heading out to reinforce the perimeter after the explosion at the warehouse. They left the door unlatched for a few seconds too long. It was all the invitation Reacher needed. He slipped through the door behind them, entering the sterile, air-conditioned quiet of the lion's den. He moved through the house with practiced ease. The carpets were thick, swallowing the sound of his footsteps. The walls were adorned with expensive, tasteless art. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his senses on high alert. He heard voices from the office. El Martillo was not alone. Reacher reached the second-floor landing. A single guard stood outside the office door, a professional, alert, and armed with a submachine gun. Reacher couldn't risk a gunshot. He retreated to the end of the hall, found a heavy bronze statue on a pedestal, and lifted it. It weighed at least 50 pounds. He walked back down the hall, holding the statue like a battering ram. The guard heard him, turned, his eyes widening in surprise. He didn't even have time to raise his weapon before Reacher slammed the base of the statue into his chest. The guard was thrown backward against the office doors, which burst open from the impact. Reacher stepped over the groaning guard and into the office. El Martillo was behind a massive oak desk, a phone in one hand. Two other men, his personal bodyguards, were in the room. They were already drawing their pistols. El Martillo, a man with cold, intelligent eyes and a neatly trimmed beard, simply looked at Reacher. He showed no surprise, only a flicker of curiosity. "So," he said into the phone in Spanish, "the problem has delivered itself to my door. I will call you back." He hung up. The bodyguards fanned out, their guns trained on Reacher's chest. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble," El Martillo said in perfect English. "My name is Hector Morales. You may call me El Martillo. Everyone does. And you are?" "The guy who's shutting you down," Reacher said. Morales chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "A bold claim for a dead man. You have destroyed my property and killed my men. I should be angry. Instead, I am impressed. Who sent you? The DEA? The feds?" "No one sent me. I was just passing through." This seemed to amuse Morales even more. "A force of nature. I like that. It is a shame I have to kill you." He gave a slight nod to his men. Reacher moved before the nod was even completed. He dove forward, not at the gunman, but at the massive desk. He hit it with his full weight, driving it into Morales's legs, pinning him against the wall. Morales cried out in pain. The bodyguards were momentarily thrown off, hesitant to shoot with their boss in the line of fire. It was the only hesitation Reacher needed. He vaulted over the desk, using one hand to launch himself. His foot caught the first gunman in the jaw, snapping his head back. As the man fell, Reacher grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the pistol fired into the ceiling. He used the man's body as a shield as the second gunman opened fire. Bullets ripped through the first guard. Reacher felt the impacts, but they weren't his problem. He wrenched the gun from the dead man's hand and, in the same motion, fired 2 shots. The second gunman clutched his chest and collapsed. The entire exchange had taken less than 5 seconds. The room was suddenly silent, except for the pained groans of Morales, trapped behind his desk. Reacher kicked the weapons away from the fallen men and pulled the desk back. Morales slumped into his chair, one of his legs bent at an unnatural angle. "It's over," Reacher said. Morales looked up at him, his face a mask of pain and fury. "Over? This is nothing. I am a part of an organization, a brotherhood. You kill me, they will send 10 more. They will wipe that miserable town off the map just to make a point. Then they'll have to find it first," Reacher said. He saw a blinking red light on a console on the desk, a silent alarm. Reinforcements were on their way. He had to end this. "You think this is about drugs?" Morales spat. "This town, this operation, it is a gateway. We are bringing in soldiers, men loyal to us. We are building an army right under your noses." Reacher looked at the man, a self-proclaimed king sitting on a broken throne. He felt no pity, only a cold disgust. "Your army just lost its general," Reacher said. He picked up the heavy bronze statue from the floor. Morales's eyes widened. "Wait." Reacher didn't wait. He left the house the same way he came in, through the chaos of arriving guards who had no idea their leader was dead. The sounds of shouting and gunfire behind him were the sounds of a headless snake consuming itself. He slipped through the drainage pipe and disappeared into the desert night. He made his way to the outskirts of town, to the highway. He saw Elena standing in the doorway of her diner, looking out at the chaos. Their eyes met across the distance. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. A weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. For the first time, she didn't look afraid. By morning, the state police and federal agents would descend on Tres Cruces, drawn by the fire and the small-scale war that had erupted at the Morales ranch. They would find warehouses full of ashes, a dead cartel boss, and a town full of people who would suddenly find their voices again. They would tell a confusing story about a large, silent stranger who had passed through like a hurricane, leaving wreckage and a clean slate in his wake. But Jack Reacher would be long gone. He stood at the edge of the highway as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. A truck geared down and pulled over. "Need a lift?" the driver asked. "Thanks," Reacher said, climbing in. "Where you headed?" Reacher looked at the road stretching out before him, a long, empty ribbon leading to nowhere in particular. "Doesn't matter," he said. "Just forward."